Before we begin this educational content, it's not a substitute for therapy or diagnosis or crisis support. Trauma and sexuality can bring up a lot. You're invited. I really want you to take care of yourself during this. So if you need to step away, if you need to turn your camera off, stretch, get water, whatever you need, you're encouraged because it's your own comfort level and your own autonomy. Participation in this is consent-based and voluntary. So I invite you to just take a real deep breath to begin. And we will get into it. So, Ed, thank you for the wonderful introduction. And for some reason, I'm on the wrong slide. That was the title slide. So, who am I? Leia gave me a wonderful introduction. On top of everything else, I'm also a geek certified therapist and therapeutic game master. So, I do talk in song lyrics and movie quotes sometimes. So, you may hear that. The objectives for the 60 minutes is understanding how trauma impacts desire, arousal, and attachment, how to rebuild safety, autonomy, and agency, how to reframe shame and internalize stigma. And do trauma-informed consent-based practices for self-compassion and sexual confidence. I also put in some sex work specific things in this one as well. So disclaimer, anytime I mention a case, I'm not going to say names, dates, anything has been changed, HIPAA, and I've had consent from the individuals to share the case. And a few agreements while we're going through this: go at your own pace, you're in charge of your own body and your attention. Use what fits and leave the rest for this. I'm going to use inclusive language, or try to anyway. Sexuality looks different across many identities, orientations, relationship structures, and culture. So I'm going to go over a few definitions first. So if I say trauma, it's an experience or a series of experiences that overwhelms our capacity to cope and leaves the nervous system in a protective state. Consent is an ongoing, informed, freely given yes with space for no, not now, or maybe later. Sex positive, we're looking at pleasure, sexuality are not inherently shameful. Ethics and consent matter. If we're looking at trauma informed, it's worse. We assume trauma may be present and we prioritize safety, choice, collaboration, trust, and empowerment. So the effects of trauma on desire, arousal, and attachment. So trauma can do a lot of things to sexuality and how it can come up and show uniquely when it is a part of our livelihood. So if we're looking at the nervous system, trauma can condition the body to scan for danger and intimacy. Cues that quote unquote should feel neutral or even pleasurable can be interpreted as a threat. And this shows up as hyperarousal. So that can be anxiety, vigilance. That's where your head is on a swivel. You're constantly scanning for danger. Difficulty relaxing, and that I can't turn my brain off. Can also show up as hypoarousal, which is numbness, shut down, disassociation, which is like you feel like you're not really there, or you're watching yourself from a different lens and you feel really far away. So one of the key things to remember is these are not character flaws. They are protective adaptations. It's how your nervous system and your body has learned how to protect you from anything it thinks is dangerous. From a neurological perspective, trauma responses are adaptive. And sex workers often develop highly effective regulatory strategies for performance. However, these adaptations may interfere with embodied presence or pleasure outside of the work context. So when you're going to your own private relationships and sexuality, it may feel different because you're not putting on a mask and you're not performing anymore. This is you being vulnerable. So desire and arousal changes, and as far as work mode. So if we're looking in the sex work industry, many people develop a work mode that is competent, presentational, and goal-oriented. That can be empowering, and it can also mask burnout or disconnection. So trauma does impact certain things like spontaneous desire. That's like wanting sex out of the blue. Doesn't matter. You don't need like a hype up, so to speak. Whereas responsive desire, you're building, that desire builds after safety and connection is there. There's a lot of context around it. It can also impact arousal patterns. So being able to get lubrication, so wet, pre-cum, things like that. The erection can change, pain, tension, all of these things can change with those patterns. There's going to be a lot of triggers, and triggers are anything that is going to have you be hypo or hyper aroused. It's going to trigger that trauma response. So smells are a big one. Positions can do that. Words, power dynamics can also bring on this change or impact it. And the ability, it's going to be harder sometimes to switch between work sexuality and personal sexuality. And healing doesn't mean you have a constant high libido. It just means you're having a choice, you have flexibility, and you have self-trust. So also if we're looking at the arousal template, we used to think it was just you have a high sex drive, but now with more modern research with clinical sexology, we've learned it's a two-part system. There's an accelerator and there are brakes for sexual desire. Sexual desire isn't a simple on-off switch. For many people, it works like a car. Like I said, there are accelerators that increase the interest in arousal and brakes that slow or stop desire when something feels unsafe, stressful, or overwhelming. This framework can be especially helpful when talking about trauma because trauma often changes both systems at the same time. So if we're looking at accelerators of desire, those are internal and external cues that signal this is pleasurable, it's connecting, and it's worth moving forward with. I want to continue this. And those can include emotional safety and trust with a partner, feeling desired, seen, and respected, positive body sensations that can include like warmth, touch, relaxation, or any of the sensations that are pleasurable to you because these are all individualized, erotic novelty, playfulness, fantasy, or flirtation, a sense of autonomy and choice, low stress, and enough rest. These are all things that can help accelerate. When accelerators are engaged, the body may respond with increased arousal, curiosity, and openness to that sexual connection. Importantly, accelerators can be different for each person, and they can also change over time. So one thing that would turn you on before may not work anymore, or something different. Like, oh, well, I like this now, where I didn't like this before. If we're looking at the brakes of desire, brakes are protective. They activate when the brain and body detects threat, pressure, or discomfort. Whether the threat is real, remembered, or simply anticipated. Common brakes often include stress, burnout, mental overload. For an example, I had a friend recently who has been hypersexual for the longest time. And since they have been experiencing a lot of stress in their personal life, their desire for sex has gone down. They're not craving that anymore. And they used to crave it every day, all day. It was a constant thing. And now they're like, is something wrong with me? It's like, no, you're just overloaded right now. And when the body feels stressed or hurt or like it's sick, it's not going to respond sometimes with that sexual desire. Other breaks are fear of judgment, rejection, conflict. I just said medical concerns, feeling rushed or obligated or pressured, relationship disconnection or lack of emotional attunement. You're not in sync with your partner or partners. Past negative sexual experiences. And breaks don't mean someone is broken. They often mean the nervous system is doing its job to try to prevent harm. And one of the things with like how trauma does affect both of these systems is trauma can sensitize the brakes, so making them activate faster and more intensely. A smell or a tone of voice, a certain positions, or even a well-intentioned touch can cue the nervous system to shift into protection mode. And this may show up as a numbness, like we said before, the shutting down, irritability, anxiety, disassociation, and that sudden, like, I'm not in the mood anymore, I'm done. At the same time, trauma can complicate accelerators. Some people notice their accelerators feel muted, pleasure is harder to access, or desire feels really far away. Others experience desire that spikes in specific contexts, and sometimes connected to reclaiming control. Seeking soothing or repeated familiar patterns, none of these responses are wrong. They're understandable, and they're understandable adaptations for what has happened. Ultimately, desire is not a moral measure of or a performance. It's information. When we treat accelerators and brakes as signals from the nervous system, especially in the context of trauma, we can move towards a sexual experience that feels safer and more connected and more genuinely pleasurable. So again, with like the accelerators and brakes, both can be pressed at the same time. And when they're both pressed, it's still not going to go anywhere. It's the same thing like if a car, you're pressing the brake and then you're also pressing the gas, it's just going to spin those wheels and nothing is happening. So the brakes will override the accelerator a lot of the time. And if you're curious more about this, if you look up Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, there's also a workbook with that book as well. It explains more of the stress responses, accelerators, and brakes, as well as there's an assessment in there that you can take to see if you have high brakes, high accelerator, low accelerator, to see where you fit in there. So attachment and intimacy is also part of this. Trauma can shape how we attach to people, how we show up in relationships. And it can be like fear of abandonment or rejection, fear of closeness or being seen. So that's being too vulnerable. People pleasing or fawning to stay safe. We're just doing things so we keep the peace. And difficulty trusting one's own no. So if we're looking at a sex work specific layer, stigma can add a secondary wound with this, with the attachment, like I'm unlovable, I'm dirty, I don't deserve care, my boundaries don't matter. And these stigma stories aren't true. And this is where we get into the attachment intimacy. Sex doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens inside a nervous system and inside a relationship, whatever that looks like. Trauma can shape how safe the body feels with closeness, and attachment style can influence how we seek connection, reassurance, and intimacy. When you put those two together, or put all these together, it can explain a lot of why sex feels easy in some moments and complicated in others. For people with anxious attachment, sex can become a way to secure closeness. If we're intimate, we're okay. That's the narrative that's being played. Trauma may intensify this by making rejection and distance feel threatening, which can lead to people pleasing, that difficulty saying no, kind of like that choosing to lose. I'm just gonna do what you say because I fear losing you. I fear that rejection. And feel panicky when desire isn't matched. So if you're really wanting to be with this person and this other person is doing some of the classic avoidant, like I'm wanting to get away, I'm wanting to not be that close, that can induce a panic feeling. And for people with avoidant attachment, sex may feel safer when it's more controlled, less emotionally vulnerable, or on their terms. So with this, sex that's not involving like a deeper intimacy with somebody, you're not trying to connect with them emotionally, just physically, it will feel safer. Trauma can amplify the need for distance, creating patterns like shutdown, like you're just shutting down, like that wall goes down, you're dissociating, you're not there, or feeling irritated when a partner wants more connection. So they want more than you're willing to give. For someone with a secure attachment, sex is more likely to be flexible. Desire can rise and fall without it meaning that the relationship is in danger. Trauma can still impact arousal, but secure dynamics often make it easier to communicate, slow down, and repair if there's an issue. Having a trauma-informed approach to sex starts, like we said before, with consent, and we're going to go over that later. Pacing, having those honest, transparent conversations about needs. And the goal isn't to force desire, it's to build safety so intimacy can be chosen, not endured. And something with particularly sex work is we're looking at distinguishing erotic labor from embodied sexuality. So some important distinctions is skillful performance does not equal internal safety. On-camera consent does not equal nervous system consent. Desire may differ across context because context does matter, especially when we talked before about the accelerators and brakes. Context matter a lot. So clinically and ethically, it's essential not to exaggerate professional sexual performance or confuse them with the personal erotic desire. This distinction supports non-pathologizing care, so we're not looking at, mental health care and it reduces shame for individuals whose sexual experience may vary across contexts. And it can embody it and protective to distinguish erotic labor from embodied sexuality. Erotic labor is skilled, intentional work of creating an erotic experience for someone else. It can involve a performance, emotional attunement, fantasy building, boundaries, and customer service, often with clear goals that include income, safety, professionalism, and negotiated terms. Like other forms of labor, it can be meaningful, neutral, and draining, depending on conditions, consent, and support. Embodied sexuality, by contrast, is the lived internal experience of desire, pleasure, that curiosity and connection in one's own body. It includes what feels authentic, what turns you on or off, how your nervous system responds, and what intimacy means to you outside of a transaction. Confusing the two can create pressure, believing, again, you should, so those expectations, feel desire because you can perform it, or assuming that performing eroticism means you owe access to your personal sexuality. Separating them supports autonomy, so it supports your own choice, your own independence. It allows sex workers to say, I can be excellent at my job, and I still have my own private erotic self, and to build practices that both protect livelihood and well-being through boundaries, debriefing, aftercare, and trusted support. And so now we're going to get into, trauma-shaped sexuality through this protection that we talked about earlier. Healing often starts with rebuilding that safety internally and in your own environments. So safety isn't just an idea, it's a whole body experience. And we're going to focus on different 3 layers. So you have the internal safety, you have relational safety, and you have sexual safety. For people in the sex industry, safety often extends beyond physical boundaries to include financial security, reputational protection, and control over access. And it can also do with practical reality. So screening, like we said earlier, having those exit plans, community support. So one of the tools that I want to talk about for restoring safety and autonomy is the green, yellow, red body map. So it's almost like the green, yellow, and red flags that people will talk about dating. So think of this as consent and a nervous system check-in. You're just checking in with yourself. Green, you're open, you're curious, you're relaxed, you're present. Yellow, with the caution light, you're unsure, you might be a little tense, you're distracted. Maybe this is a cue we need to slow down. Red, You're shut down. There's a panicky, there's a numb, there's a pressured feeling. That's a stop. We need to stop this. We don't need to push through. So I want you to, as you're sitting there right now, what color does your body feel like after I explain them? You don't have to share it. Just kind of check in with yourself. Right now, I'm probably at a green. And how can we use this? You check in before intimacy, during and after. Yellow is not familiar, it's information. It's not a failure. So if things are like, I don't know about this, it's information for you to take in. It's information about yourself to catalog. And also remember that if your body's feeling like a red, stop and regulate. Just like if you're doing a power exchange play or BDSM play, a lot of people do use the red light system. So if someone's calling red, that's we need to stop. We need to stop, we need to regulate, we need to ground, and we need to discuss what happened. What's making it a red, or do you need something else? Do we need to talk to somebody else about this? So for work context, it can also be a post-shift check-in. Like, what color am I after work today? What am I feeling like? Am I feeling open? Am I feeling fun? Am I feeling not so sure, like meh? Or do I feel shut down and I just don't want to deal with anything for the rest of the day? And if you've taken any other trauma courses that I've given, I talk a lot about the polyvagus nerve or the autonomic ladder. And this also correlates with that. So with the green, usually you're going to be in the ventral vagal, and that's where we're primed for connection in our vagus nerve. That's the nerve that runs all the way down our spinal cord. And it branches out into our body. So if we're looking at green, if we're feeling green, that means we're calm, we're grounded, and we're ready to connect with people. If we're in yellow, we're shifting into the sympathetic nervous system, which means we're going to feel anxious. We might feel irritable. That's when that fight or flight is open, like we're ready to do one or the other. And we're stuck in the worry thoughts or anxiety spirals. If we're in red, we are most likely at the bottom of the ladder and we're in dorsal vagal. That's when we feel numb. We feel like we're going to collapse. Red cues can include like heaviness, numbness, fogginess, dissociation, or again, feeling far away from the body. So using this map in conjunction with the knowledge of the polyvagal ladder can help you shift things early. That's more awareness, being more self-aware and more of that mind-body connection, which will help you feel safer knowing that this is happening. And then you can choose what supports are best for you. Some people do grounding, some people like pacing, or a different type of connection. So we can slowly climb back up that ladder into a green zone. Another type of intervention for yourself that can build agency, we're looking at micro choices. Hold on one second for me. So you can start building that trust in self again. So asking simple questions of, do you want to keep going? Are you wanting to slow down? Do you want to stop? Would you prefer more distance or more closeness? Do you want lights on or off? Do you want to be touched here, or not at all? So these are questions you can ask yourself, or these are also things that you can ask a partner that you're with. Now, if we're looking at a professional version for the boundaries, you can say, if it's a no, like that's not available, here's what is available. If that doesn't work for you, then we're not a match today. So these are all ways of honoring yourself and rebuilding that safety because you're holding those boundaries and you're not abandoning yourself. So you're able to stand firm in who you are and choose you, which will help build that safety so you can then feel safer to explore more. Another way to do a choice in session is you can say, would you like to talk about this now? Or do you want to bookmark it? Or do you want to like put a pin in it and we'll come back to it? Are there any questions so far? I'm not seeing any, so I will keep going. Another thing, I'm giving you a lot of tools today, by the way. You're welcome. Also, again, check in with your body. If you're needing to take a break, please take a break. Another thing is a 3-minute regulation reset. And if the nervous system spikes, you don't push through it. We have to welcome back that safety to feel safe in our own bodies and feel safe where we're at. So one of the things for 3-minute regulation, name 5 things that you can see. You can do the countdown, which is a normal one, like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can taste, 1 thing you can touch. That's one of the more grounding ones that are more popular. You can also press your feet on the floor to feel support, so you're not feeling that floaty feeling. A long exhale. You want to exhale longer than you inhale because what that does to your nervous system is telling it, we're okay. We can take a long exhale. When you're holding your breath, typically, if we're looking at evolutionary practices, we hold our breath so we don't make a noise, so we don't make sound, so predators can't find us. So being able to take that inhale and that long exhale out allows our body and our nervous system to say, okay, we're good where we're at. It's okay. Also, orienting and looking around the room to remind yourself, I'm here. Now I'm safe enough to be in this moment. Another thing to add to the orient that's not on the slide at the moment, there are things called anchors. So any room that you're in, pick 3 anchors, and these are things that don't move. They can be pictures. They can be like a tchotchke that you have on the desk, a TV, and these are things that were not present at the time of trauma. Be able to say, okay, I'm here in 2025. I'm at this time, I'm at this date, just so your body and you're reminding yourself you're not back there. You're here and it's okay. So if we're looking at different relational tools, and this can even work with self as well, is an intimacy ladder, and we're going from the bottom up. Intimacy ladder and also sensate focus, I'm going to go over as well. These are tools that sex therapists use to help people get more comfortable with intimacy with each other again, or even start. So we start off with really benign things. So sitting close and you're fully clothed. That feels safe. We're not touching, but we're in proximity with each other. Holding hands, we're still fully clothed. But it's a different type of touch. It's intimate, but it's not, let's say we're going into upper arms or thighs or anything like that. It's just hand holding. And then moving into cuddling. That can be with clothes on, clothes off, whatever feels safe. And from cuddling, we can move up to kissing. That's more vulnerable. And then we go into non-sexual touch. So this is touch that are not in the erogenous or normal erogenous zone. So no breasts, buttocks, groin, nothing of those natures that are overtly sexual. And non-sexual touch can be, we're just massaging, we're touching. And I know some people, especially neurospicy people, when we're doing, like I said, sensual touch, so a lot of people think of the light one. That can hurt some neurospicy people. So this feels better, like gripping. Feels a lot more comforting, almost like a weighted blanket. And then from sensual touch, we're going to sexual touch. And that is where we're doing, we're touching the breasts, the buttocks, groins. We're going into more penetration or non-penetrative type sexual positions for that to feel safe. Sensate focus is very similar to this, only it's more of like a 5-stage. And then I'm going from the top down on this one. It's the non-sexual touching, like I said before. The touching the erogenous zones, so that's genitals, breasts. Step 3, we're adding lubrication to enhance sensations, but the whole time The partners are communicating. That feels good. That doesn't feel good. Harder, lighter, faster, slower. I want more heat. I want cold. So we're teaching how to be transparent with needs and communication and how to receive that communication, not as rejection, but as information. And going into like the mutual touching, and then we're going into sensual intercourse and sexual intercourse. Now, if we're going to translate this latter to, let's say, sex work for things to feel safer, and I'm going from the bottom up here, no intimacy. It's going to be admin only at the very bottom rung of what we're looking at here. So that could be like screening, scheduling, payments, boundaries, expectations, safer sex agreements. Professional presence is the next rung. So your greeting, your tone, the eye contact, the basic rapport building, and your focus on control, clarity, and consent. So remember, consent, there can't be a yes if there's not a no present. And we're going up to the next rung. We're looking at flirtation and fantasy, and this is still no contact. So this can be sexting, role play, dirty talk, content creation, erotic conversation, and the focus is performance without body access, so without being able to touch. Then going up to non-sexual touch, if applicable, if you are doing in-person sex work. So hand-holding, cuddling, massage, dancing. The focus here is we're pacing, and you're also doing those nervous system check-ins for yourself. Am I feeling safe? Am I feeling comfortable to continue this work or this performance? Then we're moving on to sensual touch. Kissing, clothed touch, striptease, lap dance. And the focus here is on clear limits and clear time frames. So if you're only there for an hour, it's an hour. If we're doing explicit sexual touch, and these acts are negotiated. Only what is explicitly agreed to, so this is consent, no sliding into new acts without having a new negotiation. And the focus on here is ongoing consent, safety, and professionalism. The last rung is aftercare and decompression. So this is more specific for you. Hygiene, hydration, grounding, debriefing notes for yourself, emotional reset. The focus here is separating from the work of intimacy from personal embodied sexuality. So we're separating the work from our own personal sexuality and sexual experience. So if we're doing like a personal life add-on here, when your body is off duty, if you want to separate the personal ladder, include rungs that emphasize mutuality, so being desired, being cared for, saying no without consequences. What's the repair? So we're going through our triggers or what felt good, what didn't, if we're needing reassurance, if we're needing a slow reconnection. So these are more for the personal life when you're off duty to help separate your erotic labor versus your embodied sexuality. And once safety and agency are present, shame often becomes the next barrier when we're talking about sex and healing after trauma. So we have to learn how to reframe shame and internalized stigma. Shame says something is wrong with me, the I am. Trauma can rewire shame into the body, especially when messages about sexuality were already restrictive. I do see this a lot with religious trauma. There is usually a lot of shame around sex and sexuality. So common shame stories that I've heard are, I should be over it by now. It happened so long ago. I should be over it. If I got aroused, it means I wanted it. My body betrayed me. I'm too much or not enough. I can't be a real partner because of my work. So if we're doing a reframe, this is allowing compassion, self-compassion, and safety to come back into it, and we're not looking at others' particular expectations of us. Arousal is a body response, not consent. And this comes, I've heard this from individuals, especially with people who own vaginas. I was wet, so I wanted it. That's not true. Lubrication is a bodily response. It doesn't mean that your desire turned it on. It can, but it can also not. Survival responses are intelligent. So we're talking about things like freeze and fawn. These are not failures. Again, it's your body trying to keep itself safe. And these are things that have worked in the past. Pleasure can be reclamation. It's not an obligation. This is a choice. So you get to choose what you're going to participate in and what you're not. This also builds safety and autonomy. Your work does not erase your humanity. So you deserve care and respect. Even if you're doing sex work and performing, that doesn't erase your own personal sexuality and your experiences. You deserve care and respect as well. And this is a tool with the reframing. It's name it, place it, and replace it. First thing you're going to do is you're going to name what is the shame sentence. And that's I am something. I am broken is a common one. And then you're going to place it. Where do you feel it in your body? See, am I correct in thinking lubrication may support safety as it may convey to others things are going as they should? There's no reason to believe they are resisting. That can be. It can mean safety. It depends, but usually lubrication is typically a bodily response to a stimulus. So let's say someone is, playing with breasts or things like that. The body may get the cue like, oh, this is supposed to be, we're getting ready to have sex. We're getting ready to procreate. So we need to lubricate the vaginal canal for that. So it doesn't always mean safety. It is a bodily response. So with back to the name it, place it, and replace it, where do you feel the shame sentence in your body? Are you feeling it in your chest, your throat, your stomach? And then you replace it with a compassionate truth. So if I am broken is a common shame one. Where am I feeling the shame in my body? That sentence. I'm healing to replace the statement, I'm healing and my body learned protection. Another common example is I owe my partner sex. A replacement is I owe myself safety and honesty. Shame, I owe people access to me. Replacement, I owe myself safety and honesty. So that's a really good particular affirmation. I owe myself safety and honesty. Another shame sentence, my work makes me feel unworthy of love. You replace it with my worth is inherent. My work is not my morality. So think about a particular shame sentence that you may tell yourself, and what would be a compassionate thing to replace it with? Instead of I am whatever the negative shame thought is, what can you replace it with? Or I am worthy, I'm safe, this is what's happening. That typically helps for that. So thank you. So if we're looking at consent-based practices for self-compassion and confidence, confidence after trauma isn't being fearless. It's about being self-led. An important distinction, like in sex work, consent and boundaries often include professional consent. So what are we agreeing to do for work? And personal consent, what do you want for yourself? They can overlap or be totally different, and both deserve respect. Shame, stigma, and internalized horophobia. So common internalized belief when we're looking at these is I chose this, so harm doesn't count. My body is a product, it's not mine. I don't deserve gentleness. So, internalized horophobia is what happens when society's stigma about sex work gets absorbed into a sex worker's self concept. So, what do you think about yourself? Even when someone intellectually believes sex work is valid labor, they may still carry an emotional residue of shame, secrecy, or I'm less worthy now. It can show up as harsh self-talk, feeling dirty, avoiding health care, minimizing boundaries to prove you're not like the other workers, or believing you don't deserve respect, love, or safety. Because horophobia is reinforced through laws, media, stereotypes, and moral judgment, internalization is not a personal failure. It's a predictable response to chronic stigma. Naming it can be a turning point, and because shame thrives in silence, but it weakens when it's spoken. So that's when we're going back to the name it. Where do you feel it? Name it, place it, and then replace it. A supportive approach includes community connection, affirming therapy, values-based boundary work, and also separating erotic labor from personal worth, and practicing the belief that dignity is not something that you earn by being acceptable. It's inherent. And one reason why I really do love working for Pineapple Support is they explicitly address stigma as a mental health risk factor, reframing the shame that involves recognizing sociocultural harm rather than individual failure. And this is recognizing, socioculture rather than having an individual failure. And a good practice that we have with this is consent with self. So consent starts with us because boundaries keep us safe. Do I want this now? Wow, that went twice. Or do I want this at all? What would make this feel safer? What's my yes and what's my no? Where's that line at? We have pleasure as information. I only have 10 minutes, so I'm gonna try to get all this in. Pleasure can be tiny and still meaningful. So it can include a warm shower, soft cloth, stretching, self-touch that's non-sexual. So if we're looking at somatic exercises, the self-hugs, the self-gripping, those can feel pleasurable and safe. This builds a body positive association without having that pressure that you have to perform. And this is done usually with a partner or somebody that you've had a conflict with or a rupture with. We have repair conversations. So a very simple repair script looks like, when X happened, my body went into Y. So it could have been, when you touched my neck, my body froze and I went into a dissociative response. It's not you, it's my body trying to keep me safe. And I'm trying to work through progressing with this, or let's talk about other ways to touch that would feel more pleasurable to me. What I need next time is Z, so we're going into that needs. Can we agree on a pause word or a check-in? This is what I really like about power exchange relationships, is they already build in safe words and check-ins, like, how are you doing? How is this feeling? Are you doing all right? Do we need to red? Are you at yellow? Whatever the safe word or check-in words are. Really good to help to keep that safety with somebody. And also it brings that choice. Like you sometimes you forget, if you're in a scene, like a BDSM scene or high impact scene, sometimes you will forget, oh yeah, I can stop this at any point. Or at least it's happened to me. Like, oh yeah, if I don't like it, I can say no, I can stop. And moving on to like desire, self-worth, and erotic agency. So some of the things we're going to touch on is desire without monetization, pleasure without performance, intimacy without obligation, validity of asexual or low desire phases. In sex work, it's common for desire and self-worth to get entangled with performance, income, and client feedback. Erotic agency is the practice of separating who you are from what you do for work, and reclaiming sexuality as something that you choose, shape, or set down. Erotic agency includes desire without monetization, wanting or not wanting something simply because it's true in your body, not because it sells. It includes pleasure without performance, allowing sensation to be messy, quiet, or ordinary without needing to be hot, convincing, or camera ready. It also includes intimacy without obligation. In a work context, intimacy can be negotiated, time-bound, and transactional. In personal life, agency means you get to say yes, no, or not today without punishment, without persuasion, coercion, or proving you're good. Finally, erotic agency honors the validity of asexual or low desire phases. Stress, trauma, burnout, hormones, grief, or simply life can definitely shift that sexual desire, that libido. A dip in desire isn't a moral failure or a brokenness. Again, it's information. It's telling you something is going on that you might need to pay attention to. When self-worth is rooted in dignity rather than desirability, erotic agency becomes more possible. Your sexuality belongs to you, nobody else, it's yours, even when erotic labor is part of your livelihood. So yay, I did get through a lot of this stuff. Awesome. So ethical practice requires honoring self-determination and self-determination definitions of sexuality. Healing does not require restoring a specific level of desire. It requires restoring choice, agency, and self-trust. This is how you can start healing through your own sexuality, whether it's by yourself or with somebody else. So some key takeaways from this that I wanted you to know. Safety and agency are foundation, but it's not fixing a libido. The script frames healing as rebuilding safety, autonomy, self-trust, so intimacy becomes chosen, not endured. Trauma changes desire through the nervous system. That's the accelerators and brakes we talked about. Hyperarousal and hypoarousal are positioned as protective adaptations. They're not character flaws, helping normalize variability in desire and arousal. Consent is ongoing and body-based. Remember the red, yellow, green body map and regulation tools, and emphasize yellow is information, red is stop. And consent includes pacing, options, and nervous system check-ins. Attachment patterns shape sexual dynamics, and stigma adds a secondary wound. The script connects trauma to anxious and avoidance strategies, so what happens in those particular attachment styles, and explicitly names sex work stigma stories as learned narratives, not truths. So they're not the truth about yourself. Separate erotic labor from embodied sexuality to reduce shame. It highlights the performance doesn't equal internalized safety. On-camera consent does not equal nervous system consent. And erotic agency includes desire without monetization, pleasure without performance, intimacy without obligation, and valid and low, and it's valid to have a low sexual desire or asexual desire at any point in time. Now we're in the question and answer session. We got about 5-ish minutes. And I have one that says, what is your current general perception, opinions, etc. on consensual, non-consent, and focused fetish and kink, like as in consent as a whole, in regards to things like ethics, weight of risk versus benefit? If I were to try to put in a simpler way from a psychology and healthcare view, is CNC more likely to be something that's just fine to enjoy and participate in, and adequate safety measures, or is it something better to be avoided and not fed into or whatever? Okay, so consensual non-consent is a fetish or kink we typically do it in the BDSM community. So consensual non-consent can help with trauma healing as long as there are strong negotiations ahead of time. Like what are the goes, what are the no-goes? What are we read out for? So again, it's that agency and control that you have in this piece. We're talking about it can also be rescripting that trauma. So it can help on a psychodrama level that you are in control of this. I can say no at any time and it will stop, even though maybe someone is trying to have sex with me while I'm cooking or this, that, or next thing. I can still say no if I want to. So, but it's still that illusion of consensual non-consent. So I would definitely have those negotiations early. If you have a kink aware therapist or like a group or something that you talk with them about how this is going to be empowering for you and listen if they're saying, hey, I think you might be trying to reenact your trauma. This might not be good for you. Again, check in with your body at all times with that. So I hope that was helpful. Also, if you would like a copy of the slide deck, you're welcome to email me. These are my social media, like Facebook and Instagram. I have therapist_Nicki for both of those. My website is harmonyusinc.com. And these are all the wonderful references that I used. And thank you. I'm sorry I rushed at the end, but you're welcome to text me or email me any questions that you have for this. And thank you so much.